Welcome back, Bulletproof Ballers, to the Bulletproof Baller YouTube channel. Today we'll be going through a very special concept that we need to know. This is the first pillar of our Bulletproof Ballers system, in which we are taking hundreds of people from being able to be in pain, from being able to be after their injuries being cleared by their physios, not thinking that they can get back to their sport, not thinking they can be more athletic than ever, not even thinking that they can be back to their normal self, but becoming more athletic than ever. This is a key principle which I wish I would have known when I was in my knee rehab journey. So it is joint strength, so the connective tissue within the knee, and I'll run through exactly what that is in a sec, versus muscle strength. Okay, because a lot of people have big muscles, but a lot of people with big muscles are still in pain, they still have injuries, they're not very athletic. So let's take a look at this and really dive into this and explain not only what this is and why it's important, but actually to give you the exact progressions that I used in order to be able to build my strength as well. So first thing to note, that is connective tissue is anabolic. So by connective tissue we mean the tendons, the ligaments, the cartilage, the meniscus, the stuff inside the knee, the stuff inside the shoulder joints. Everything is anabolic. It can adapt in the same way that muscles can. And humans are naturally connective tissue dominant. We've been designed in a way by God to be able to be the most resilient, to be able to be the most athletic, to be able to be built properly. And by just training the muscle, training in certain ways, then we're going to actually get rid of this balance and have issues. And again, if we've gone through some kind of injury, or if we go through modern life, we may be messed up. We may be out of balance in the way that we should be, and we need to restore that. So I'm going to show you exactly how we are going to restore that today. But this is something super important, because I was told when I was younger that I was screwed and I needed a surgery straight away. And even after my surgery, you might not be able to play football, you might not be able to do this, you might not be able to do this, because I was told that connective tissue can't heal in the same way muscles do. And everyone's cases is different, and don't consult with me, consult with your doctor. But connective tissue can adapt, it can get stronger. I have seen that in myself and in other people as well. Obviously, it's not going to grow as big, not as large as muscle tissue is, but it is going to grow in the same way that muscle tissue does. And a concept that I would like to lay out now, which is going to help us wrap our head around everything that's going on in this video, is the concept of tension versus strength. Because we always talk about strength training, but really we should be talking about tension training rather than strength training. Because all strength isn't the same, right? All force isn't the same. All tension isn't the same. If you look at a bench presser versus a parkour athlete, which we'll go into that example in a sec, they're going to be completely different, right? People are going to have different strength in different ways. And for the goal of getting back to football, or the goal of being able to use your body like an athlete, we shouldn't have muscle goals which are purely aesthetic and force producing, but we should have both muscle and connective tissue goals. We shouldn't be building muscle dominant people. We should be building connective tissue dominant people, because all of the best athletes, all of the athletes that are the most protected, are connective tissue dominant. And that doesn't mean they don't have muscle, because they do have muscle, but it's just built in a certain way that's not built in powerlifting or bodybuilding, which is the majority of the way that fitness is going nowadays, which if you look across society, all of the stuff that is more mainstream probably isn't the most beautiful way to train. It's probably not the best way to train for you to thrive as a human being, but it's probably there to serve a purpose, whether that be dopamine hits, whether that be living in a material world. For example, material secular music like Playboy Carti, Lil Uzi gives you a dopamine hit, it gets you absolutely riled up. If you go in the gym, everyone's going to be scrolling their phones, and I'm not going to lie, I do it as well. But people are training their muscles and not training how our body was actually made to be used, which is running, sprinting, jumping, all that kind of stuff, right? So what we use in the gym is a route to be able to get us back to our natural way of being, to be able to get us back to running, sprinting, jumping, playing, right? So something you got to think about is that connective tissue doesn't know math, right? Connective tissue does not know what weight you have on a bar. So you can progress tension in more than just weight, right? You can progress it in weight, for sure, but you can also progress it in reps. You can progress it in tempo, which means just how fast or slow you are moving, which again, with the bottom one is speed. The faster you go in certain positions, the more connective tissue dominant this is going to be. You can progress it in range, so going from a short range of motion, which basically means it's hardest when the muscle is contracting, versus training in a longer range, which means it's hardest when the muscle is muscle or connective tissue or whatever it is you're training is under length. Okay, but we can also look at positions, joint dominant positions. So Bulgarian split squat, you can have more weight in, but if you're doing a step up, that's going to be way more in the knee, right? It's going to be way more stress on the patellar tendon, on the ACL, all this kind of stuff. So we can use joint dominant positions as well. And if we take a look on the right, this is a couple of ways that we can think about this. So yeah, in this exercise, I have weight on the bar, 100%. But if you look at the knee angle, the knee is going over the toe. And I wanted to put this example up because we can literally make one tiny change and completely change the feeling on the knee. So if we were just to put a heel wedge underneath my foot here, so that my foot is going to be slanted here, that's going to push my knee more over the toe. And this tiny change, I would not be able to do the same way. There's no way on earth. The tension on the knee, on the structures within the knee, is going to be completely different. So it's not just the weight that we need to think about, but it's also the positioning of our body. And then if we look at this exercise on the right, this is extreme long range for the posterior chain, the hamstrings, the glutes. So if you look at the stretch that's going on here, so we've got the stretch for the hamstrings, we've got the stretch for the glutes, we've got the stretch for the lower back. So we've got so much tension pulling on everything in the posterior chain. And you can get into a similar position in something like a back extension, but it's going to be harder in the middle of the short range, right? So it's completely different exercise and it's completely different tension, which the completely different tension is also going to lead to completely different adaptations for whatever it is you are training. So let's think about a box squat versus parkour, right? Because we can load up box squat loads and loads and loads, and we could build super big muscles, but we're building muscle dominant athletes. We're building strength and CNS drive. We're building all that kind of stuff. Whereas if we look at something like parkour, where we're dropping off an edge, landing, and then having to reverse that force that's coming down on us, that's going to be more connective tissue dominant. You can see it in the way that the athletes actually develop, right? The athlete on the right isn't going to look as muscly, but he's going to be able to move better. Right? The athlete on the left is going to have big muscles for sure, but he's not going to be able to move anywhere near as good as the athlete on the right is. So what we are doing in our strength training nowadays, in traditional rehab and traditional strength training, is building muscle for sure, but muscle isn't everything. They're telling you, okay, just build the muscles around your knee and everything's going to be fine. Like that's not how it works. That's not how we should be training. That's not how we should be looking at training. We should be looking at training in terms of a bunch of different things, and I'm going to go through a couple of ways we want to look at it instead. If we were just to develop the box squats, Bulgarian split squats, leg extensions, all that kind of stuff, I promise you could do 9 months of rehab but still not feel that great, even though you've built a lot of muscle. You will feel a little bit better, and I'm not saying muscle is not important. Don't get me wrong, I still have a goal to build muscle. I just want to build everything in balance in the way that the body is designed, so connective tissue dominant, right? Because you think about how force is placed on your body. There's 2 ways. There's internal force, which is the muscle placing force on the connective tissue. But there's also external force. So there's gravity pushing down on you. There's load pushing down on you. So you have 2 different ways of delivering force. So we're not saying the muscle's not important, especially if we're in a sport where we have to have a lot of acceleration, where we have to push against objects such as the NFL, right? If you look at something like rugby, you have to be more muscle dominant as well. Like, you still have to have healthy connective tissue, but you do have to be more muscle dominant. You have to have a higher muscle number compared to a sport like football, for example. So there's a couple of different ways which I want to look at tension, which I think are the major things missing in most traditional training. So the first thing is length. Right? So we don't just need strength. Strength is super important, but we also need length. This length is going to give a different adaptation to the tissue, right? So if we look at something like a reverse Nordic or an ATG split squat, as the video I've got here, there's the quad is going through its full range of motion, so it's going to be strengthening through its longest range. So here in this bottom position is going to be the hardest in the ATG split squat, so you're getting that long range of motion, but you're also getting load down the back quad, right? And length down there as well. And what this is going to do is make you more mobile. It's going to be able to put more stress on the connective tissue and different areas, as well as just building the muscle, right? If you're using a mid-range or a short range of motion, and like the box squats or the Bulgarian split squats over and over and over again, and you're not putting any length in your tissues, you are going to create an athlete that can't move as well. Length is so important when it comes to training. And then another thing that we have to look at is the speed of loading as well. So if we look at footballers here, this is a great example, especially Ronaldo, right? If you're kicking the ball over and over and over and over, that speed that you're hitting the ball at with it's like a leg extension, right? So you're extending your leg into into the football and it's at really high speeds. So that is also going to create adaptation. And with someone like Ronaldo, you can just tell that his muscles they're not just mass balls, right? But they're actually built in the way that we can actually use. And this is because the sport is an adaptation in itself, right? If you look at dunkers, that speed that they're coming in to jump off, that's going to give an adaptation to dunk as well. One leg is usually a lot more developed than the other if they favor one plant. Ben Patrick, one of my mentors, talks about dunk balance, right? Jumping off all four plants, but also landing on all four plants, because we can see that this is force training in itself as well. And if we're imbalanced in that, that's going to cause injuries at the same time. So our strength training, especially the Bulletproof Baller system, wants to get us to a point where we can rebalance our body, create structural balance, so that we can then stay healthy in football or whatever it is we want to do, whether it be hiking, whether it be playing with our kids, whether it be rugby, whether it be whatever it is, right? We want to be able to stay healthy so that we can adapt naturally to that sport as well. And then we also want to create balance in that sport. But if we can't create balance in the sport because a lot of sports are hectic, like life isn't always balanced, then we can use the gym to assist us in creating that balance. And all rehab, all strength training that is helping people to get back to sport after a knee injury should be leading in this way, right? So eventually we need to get down the line to speed. So there's two other things I want you to think about there, other than just building mass on our legs and thinking that's going to save us. There's speed and there's also length. Okay, cool. Those are two things that if I'm not hitting in my training, I now need to hit. And what the goal is to create connective tissue dominant athletes, because that is what's going to be able to keep you healthy rather than just building muscle. We need to be able to use muscle and connective tissue together to be able to be healthy, to be able to perform the most athletically. But that's not going to come if you're muscle dominant, right? And there is a progression that we take people through if they are coming back from a knee injury, obviously after people have been cleared from a physio, all that kind of good stuff. If people are cleared to strength train, there is a progression that we take people through to make sure they are the most protected. So the first thing is sled, right? That's a short range of motion and it has no eccentric load. So this is a super, super gentle way to start getting load to the muscles, to the connective tissue, to all that kind of stuff. And it's not going to break down our tissues loads and loads and loads. But if we just done sleds forever, our muscles will get super, super short and it might even come up with issues as well. So that's why we have to go to the next steps, right? We have to go to the step ups, which then add eccentric load into it. Oh, okay, amazing. So this is then the next level, right? This is still a short range of motion. It's still hardest in that short range, but it's starting to get some eccentric strength. So then we go through another range progression, ATG split squats or VMO squats, right? So these are mid to long range exercises. They're going to be hardest when the muscle is stretched, and we're going for our full range of motion through our knee. So different connective tissue are going to be strengthened. Synovial fluid is going to be put into the knee. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Again, this is going to be completely different based on your scenario, and there could be different steps we put in, there could be different exercises, etc., etc., etc. But most people are going to feel more comfortable with the sleds and the step-ups than they are the ATG split squats and VMO squats because they haven't been able to use their full range, right? Especially people coming out from knee surgery. We had Colin come to us 7 months after ACL meniscus surgery, and he was just doing the leg extensions, the split squats, all that kind of stuff. He hadn't been training any knee over toe. He hadn't been training through a full range of motion. And within 8 weeks, we got him from not even being able to squat arse to grass, being able to squat through a half range of motion, but we got him to being able to squat 40 kg on his back through a full range of motion 8 weeks later, right? So that's a crazy, crazy improvement. And it's because we think of stuff in a different way. We think of stuff in a progression, right? Fourth is then the sissy squats or reverse Nordic. And on these, you then have both the strength component and you have the length. So as you in between these steps as well and add stuff like couch stretch, obviously you're getting the length for the back, hip flex, and ATG split squats. Again, there's loads of other areas that we'd be training at the same time, but this is just for the front of the knee, this is for the quads, this is the progression that I'll be looking at. These are all progressing the range, so we're looking at that for the connective tissue, and obviously within each exercise we're also increasing load, we're improving the form, we're putting more stress in certain areas, and then eventually, once we go through that range progression, we can then start to add a speed progression, the elasticity, which basically just means your ability to decelerate and reverse force, reverse tension, is better than your ability to produce tension, right? So if you can jump to a certain height, but then you can't land from that height, we're creating a body that's muscle dominant and can produce a lot of force, but can't absorb that force, can't actually take that eccentric force. Then this is the fifth step, and this is going to be the stuff that's going to get us back to sport. Okay, amazing. But again, a lot of people do this in the wrong way. So a lot of people just do box squats up to a box. So then again, you're producing force. You're even in the plyos. Like, it's not just doing plyos. By just doing plyos, you could do muscle dominant plyos as well. Amazing. We want to do elastic dominant plyos, right? So we want to do depth drop. We want to be able to eventually get to the point where we can reverse those depth drops, reactivity depth drops, etc., etc., etc. And this is really going to build bulletproofing and build the real knee strength and the real athletic body that we desire. And this is the thing that changed my life, right? I had so many different injuries and no one ever talked to me about ranges, about speed, about tension. All that they did was try and build up my muscle and then eventually try and return me to sport. But I was just never ready, and I ended up getting injured 4 or 5 times after, right? So our standards are higher, and our standards are structurally balanced because we've had amazing mentors, we've learned from them, we've been able to use it with clients ourselves, and we've created results after results after results with this. This is such an important concept that the world needs to grasp. People have started to grasp it thanks to ATG, but in the UK, it's really not even anywhere close, right? Still 99% of football teams don't know how to use this system. It's taken me years of being able to understand each and every exercise, why we're doing certain progressions. It's spent thousands of pounds on mentors, and it's got me to the position where I understand all this, and I could probably walk into the majority of football teams and cut their injury rates down because I understand all this. So, that being said, the service that we offer is one-to-one coaching. This is what I would have wanted when I was younger. We don't treat any medical conditions, but we take your knees, ankles, and hips ability to the level where they support whatever you want to do. Do you think if you went through this progression, this strength training with us, strength training, range, speed, all that kind of good stuff, that you wouldn't be in a better position? You wouldn't be more bulletproofed? Well, that's what we aim to do, right? And you need to go get cleared by your physio, you need to go talk to your doctors, etc., etc. We don't diagnose, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. What we are is personal trainers that help people get bulletproofed. Oh, amazing, this role, right? So if you want to do that, apply in the description down below. If you don't, I hope all of these YouTube videos help. These concepts are so important. I'm going to keep getting them out. I'm going to get them out over and over again because most people think by looking at a picture like this, okay, cool, he's protected, he's bulletproof, whatever. But I was bulletproof before I started building the muscle, right? Like, for years I was skinny and people were like, how can you tell people that you're able to bulletproof them? And then I was like, okay, well, can you jump off crossbars? And they'd be like, no. I was like, okay, cool. Do you have more muscle than me? Yes. Okay, cool. So we clearly know by that distinction that it's not the muscle that saves us, right? Because I have less muscle than you, except my knees are stronger. Because I can do a depth drop off a crossbar, which means I can absorb more force, right? More tension into the knee. Interesting. Okay, so let's start looking at this. I hope this helps. Let's make ballers bulletproof again.